So listen, so for those of you who are left, I know with weather and travel, there's a whole lot going on. But I appreciate those of you who chose to stay because this closing keynote, I think, is going to be just as powerful as the opening one. We've got a challenge ahead of us. As many of you know, there's a lot of work to be done, right? And the purpose of this conference was to get energized and powered up for the challenge that we face, so that going into it, we recognize that A, we've got allies, and B, we've got partners who are willing to be a part of this fight with us, right? And so in closing, we're gonna have a good friend of mine. I'm not gonna read his long, illustrious resume and career of all the things he's accomplished. I'm gonna say this, I've known this man a long, long time. He's a former CSO of a very large organization and multiple other ones. He's a professor at multiple universities, adjunct professor, he does a little bit of everything, right? He educates inside the corporate entities at the boardroom level. He educates as a CSO. He's now global director of over at Intuit. He's done a lot. He's accomplished a lot, right? And I asked him to do the closing keynote because I know who he is, and I know who he is at his core. And I think what he's going to bring to the table today and what he's going to be able to share with us is going to help us walk away from here with some insight and help us walk away from here remembering why we're here. With that, I'd like to welcome my good friend, Kim Jones.
Whoop, I guess you can hear me. I guess I'm turned on. With an intro like that, hopefully I will do it justice. So really quick, by show of hands, and I think I can see lots of you out here despite the lights, who here is currently working in a cybersecurity role? About 70% of you. That's good, that's good. So for those of you currently in the role, my hope is to maybe re-energize the passion that you already have, maybe give you some tools or some stories to help energize that passion around those who work for you, and avoid that infamous B word, burnout, while you're in your roles. Having said that, the bulk of this presentation is not necessarily geared towards you. It's geared towards those who did not raise their hand. You know, Mark Twain said the two most important days in the world are the day you were born and the day you find out why. I found out why many decades ago. My purpose is to keep people safe. And I have been blessed to have 3 careers and a hobby centered around keeping people safe. And I have a passion around keeping people safe. So when my good friend Larry asked me to come here and try and close this, to try and motivate people, I spent a lot of time agonizing over what I could tell you. What I could tell you to help reflect the passion and the drive that I have around what I do for a living. And I decided that I think the best thing that I can do is talk about some of the life lessons I've learned in my now 36-year career in cybersecurity. And to do that, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell some stories that illustrate those life lessons. Now, a fair warning. First, I'm going to tell you where we're going to end. And where we're going to end is just remembering that standing in the gap matters. And that because you stand, bad things do not happen. And I hope to get you there with me by the end of this time frame. But I need to warn you, I'm going to start a little bit like Kamal did on the first day. I'm going to start in some dark places, because I think we have to go through those dark places to recognize the light and to recognize the lessons that are out there. Plus, as you'll see, I genuinely think that there's value in talking about some of that darkness as we go forth if you're going to truly succeed in this profession and not drive yourself, well, batshit crazy. So hang with me. I've got about 5 lessons that I want to go through. I do acknowledge that I am the closing keynote in Miami in the middle of hurricane season when there's a hurricane less than 48 hours away. You guys can come in. So I am going to do my damnedest to stay on time and to keep you engaged and respect your time as we go forward. So bear with me. We're going to keep things moving. Let's rock and roll for a little bit. Okay, let's press the right button. There we go. First lesson is that darkness is real. This is my father, my late father, Ulysses Jones. And I want to sidetrack a little bit, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this man than you probably have heard and probably even want to know, but I think it matters. Yeah. My father was a 20-year Army veteran. On December 16th, 1950, after his division landed behind the Marines at Incheon in South Korea, my father and his division, which had driven all the way to the Chinese-North Korean border, was captured and became a prisoner of war of the Chinese and the North Koreans. He spent the rest of the Korean conflict as a prisoner of war. Now, at 20 years old, my dad, a brand new E-5 Buck Sergeant, was made Hut Commander. He was responsible for 17 individuals and their conduct and keeping them alive. Now, why he had that mission at 20 was because many of the older soldiers, fearing that responsibility and fearing the torture that came with it, and that's not figurative, that's literal, ripped off their stripes. Nearly 3 years later, with 2 broken knees and a broken arm, emaciated, he crossed the bridge of no return in the demilitarized zone, and he brought 15 of those individuals out alive. Busted, broken, hurt. For that and other actions that he took during the Korean War, my dad was the winner of the Distinguished Service Cross, which is our nation's second highest military honor, right behind the Medal of Honor. My dad wasn't just my hero. My dad was a hero. He went on to serve 2 more tours in Vietnam and earned a 3rd Purple Heart before he retired in 1967. But beyond just being a hero and my hero in every way that mattered, he was just a good dad. And I loved him. I loved him dearly. In 1978, my dad became the first black vice president of a New England-based bank, a bank which any of you in financial services might recognize should I give you the name. My dad was president of the bank's money room. See, way back when in the 70s, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, the way that you settled banks is you physically moved money. My dad was responsible for moving money into and out of the bank and all of its regional offices and settling the bank to the penny every single solitary day. He put in processes and controls that did it and did it damnably well. In April of 1980, my dad took the only non-scheduled day off he had taken in his entire career. We thought, myself, my 4 brothers and sisters, and my mother, thought he had walking pneumonia, and he damn near did. So he took a day off to go to the hospital. During that day, $34,000 of 1980 dollars, that's about $150,000 today, went missing from the bank, and the bank didn't settle. Now, nobody accused my dad of doing the work, of taking the money. In fact, it was my dad's processes that found the individual who did take the money. But they fired my dad for failure to supervise and blackballed him all up and down the East Coast. My dad couldn't get a job anything other than a grocery clerk or a security guard for the better part of 6 months. Now, 5 kids, 2 of them in private school, a car payment, a mortgage tied to the bank, our savings dwindling, and my dad trying to make ends meet. Now, we did sue and we eventually won. We won after we changed lawyers because the family lawyer happened to be on the board of directors of a small regional bank and was slow walking the actual lawsuit. When we changed lawyers, we won, not because of any fancy maneuvering this young punk attorney did, but because during the discovery phase, we found a memo that said, the money actually never left the bank. The memo that said that the executive vice president of the bank ordered my dad's assistant vice president to take the money from the main vault and put it in his vault up in the executive conference room because, and I quote, that uppity nigger needs to be taken down a peg. This, as a high school freshman, was my first experience with that oxymoronic term, business ethics. My dad did everything right. He went to school, he paid his bills, he educated his family, he worked hard, and he was blackballed, and my family was nearly bankrupt because of the color of his skin, because he was doing a good job. Now, of course, this is when dinosaurs roamed the earth. This is actually the 20th century. We were all primitives and cannibals back then. Surely this thing doesn't happen now, right? 2005. I am 2 years into my first job as a CSO for a financial services company. Irony of ironies, both my surviving brother and I are in financial services, go figure. Now, there was no I in my title. I was a converged CISO, which meant I ran the guns and the geeks. I did bad business continuity, I did executive protection, I did physical security. Part of my role in that role was to actually protect the board meetings that were going on in various locations. And whenever I did that, I always took a shift guarding the doors, sitting point. It's part of who I am. So 2005, I relieve my guard and take a shift outside of a room, a smaller conference room in a nice hotel. It's not soundproof, so that's one of the other reasons we sit out there, so nobody can overhear. And I hear my boss at the time, singing my praises. See, I was actually a cleanup type CISO. I was the guy you called when the platforms were on fire and things were going wrong. And I spent 2 years cleaning up the infrastructure, making things work, getting us regulatory compliant. And my boss is singing my praises because he's describing who I am and what I do to the newest board member. And the newest board member says, and I quote, "Well, at least the nigger's useful." This was 2005. Now, I do not believe those stories are unique. I do not believe that you all don't have similar stories to that within your history. And I don't believe that you don't face something like this at least once a year. Hell, I ran into something like this 6 months ago in my current company, and I love my current company. Why am I taking you here? Part of our job in cybersecurity is to stare into the darkness, to beat back the evil folks. But we have a challenge because there's a lot of additional static and white noise, no pun intended, a lot of white noise that exists within our environment that we have to deal with. And we don't necessarily know how to actually assimilate that as we go on and do our work. If we sit here and point it out, we're either too radical. If you're a woman, you're too sensitive. If you're a millennial, you're too woke. But if you ignore it, then you get that cognitive dissonance that causes the stress in your life and makes a hard job 50 times harder. So what we have to learn to do, what I had to learn to do, what you have to learn to do in cybersecurity, is what Admiral William Stockdale used to talk about when he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He said he had to live in two dichotomies. He had to understand that he was going to escape and firmly believe he was going to escape, and he accepted that reality, along with accepting the reality that he was not going to escape today. So what you have to do is what I used to tell my son. I used to say, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It is. And while you will remain annoyed at it, which you should, while you will succeed despite it, which you will, you must accept the reality of it right now in order to learn how to exist with it and work through it in order to survive and make it better. And we can't do that if we don't talk about it. So the first lesson here is for me to sit here and look at you and acknowledge the darkness is real, and ask all of you to do the same so that you don't end up stressing because you're ignoring it or focusing only on it and wallowing in it. And there are a lot of good reasons you don't want to do that. First lesson. Now, when I actually did this presentation to someone and just say, hey, does this work? They said, hey, that's great, we love the stories, but we get locked into the stories. You have to break things up a little bit. Maybe you can tell a joke or something. And I laughed and said, I have no sense of humor that I'm aware of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little classroom participation here. If you would all do me a favor and please stand up for a second. Okay? Let's just close your eyes and take a breath. Everyone breathe in. Everyone breathe out. One more time, breathe in. And last time, breathe out. So let's unlock from the darkness for a bit. Have a seat, please. The other reason that I want you to know and acknowledge the darkness is real, because if you don't do that, you are not prepared for the second lesson. And the second lesson is the darkness is real, but so is the light. This gentleman's name is Clyde Thomas. Clyde Thomas was my boss, was my mentor, and is now my dear friend. Clyde Thomas is part of the reason I'm standing here today. He had the dubious distinction of giving a 30-something-year-old unproven kid his first job as a chief security officer. Clyde is, bottom line, the best boss I've ever had. He gave me the room to grow. He taught me how to be a junior executive and then later a senior executive. He never lied to me. And when I say never lied to me, I'm not talking about using those mamby-pamby political wiggle words that executives do when they're trying to tap dance well because they don't want to tell you something. What Clyde would do is he would say, and he had a calm yet deep baritone, still does. He would say, look, I understand what you're trying to do. I need you not to do that right now. I can't tell you why I need you not to do that right now, but if in 3 weeks it's not clear, come back and I'll be able to tell you. Okay. How much more can you ask for? The man's being as straight with you as he can. There are things I don't need to know, and he's not trying to tap dance around it. To this day, my phone rings right now. He says I need something. I'm gone. I quit my job. I'll go wherever because I would walk through fire for that man to this day. Now, this man was the boss who was briefing that board member. Now, this calm, business-focused individual who I'd never heard raise his voice, who also happened to be a former Marine and was a drill instructor on Parris Island, spent 5 minutes calmly excoriating that board member behind closed doors, ending with, one of us is in the wrong company. Again, there's lots of darkness out there, but if all you're doing is focusing on the darkness, you will not see the light as it enters the outer edge of your radar. If I had been buried and focused in darkness as a young CISO, I would not have been able to absorb the lessons that this great, gentle giant of a man put in front of me. You cannot see the light if all you dwell on is the darkness. And what's great about this profession is all of the sources of light don't have to be in your company. Okay? I have dozens of folks who have been sources of light in my life. I could fill this slide. This is just a small selection of those dozens of folks that I have in my life. These are the people I commiserate with. These are the people I drink beer with. These are the people I bang my head against the wall and call and say, what the hell is going on? These are also the people I have the hypothetical conversations with. The one that starts, hypothetically, if this stupid ass thing happened in your company, what would you do? These are also the people who, when something goes wrong, pick up the phone and say, hey, Kim, I know something's going wrong in your company. I know you can't talk about it, but I got 3 weeks of PTO. If you'll buy me coffee and give me a spare room to bunk in, I'll come help you. These sources of light exist here within cybersecurity. I had said earlier to someone, it's not in the club, it's not in the gang, we are a family. Okay? And we are united in actually thwarting evil and holding back darkness. Look around you. Seriously, take a moment, look around you. There's at least one source of light in this room for you today. I hope you've taken the time in this conference to find them. I hope you understand the power of the light that these folks bring. So again, the darkness is real, but so is the light. Now, I relabeled this third one because someone said the original label I put on it was too harsh, but I'm going to talk the original label on it. Don't be afraid to break trail. Do not be afraid to break trail. This gentleman is Lieutenant General Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. At one time, he was commander, as I know Larry knows, of the Tuskegee Airmen. Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. is also the 4th black graduate from my alma mater, the United States Military Academy at West Point. He was class of 1936. That also made him the 1st black graduate in the 20th century, despite the fact the academy had been integrated for some 50 years. At the time when then Second Lieutenant Davis graduated from the academy, there was exactly one other officer in all of our nation's armed forces that was black that wasn't a chaplain. Incidentally, it was his father, Brigadier General Benjamin O. Davis, Sr. Now, Cadet Davis was bound and determined to graduate from the academy. The Corps of Cadets at the time was bound and determined that no black man would graduate in the 20th century. So the Corps of Cadets instituted a punishment upon Cadet Davis that is normally only reserved for violators of the Academy's honor code. They silenced him. What does that mean? Except as absolutely required in the performance of duty, no one spoke to the man, no one ate with the man, no one studied with the man. He never had a roommate. In an environment that teaches us fealty and loyalty, he spent 4 years of college in forced solitary confinement based upon the color of his skin. Now, he was too stubborn to let them succeed. Those were his words. He was too stubborn to let them succeed. And despite those challenges, not only graduated, but won the respect of his fellow cadets and officers, to the point where one of his cadets to this day, or actually to the day he died, he did not know which, wrote this blurb under his yearbook picture in his senior yearbook about the respect he'd earned. Why am I telling you this? I talk to too many people out there who will get opportunities at companies and say, I don't want to go there because there's no one who looks like me. I don't want to go there because their ethnic diversity ratios are small. And I actually go batshit crazy. How the hell is it going to get any better if you don't show up? How the hell is it going to get any better if you don't take that step? Folks, my dad marched with John Lewis across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. My dad got arrested, spat upon, beaten, and shat upon, quite literally, registering people to vote in the Deep South. In every job I've had, in every company I have been in, with the exception of the one I work for now, I was the ethnic diversity within the senior leadership. And I didn't do it because I was sitting there trying to make a point, just as my dad didn't blockbust when we went for housing because he was trying to make a point. We blockbusted because those were the good school districts. I took the jobs because they were good jobs. And I ran into this problem, and it's the 21st century. And remember, there may not be sources of light for you in the company, but in this profession, we are all around, and we are all here. And we are all here to help make you better, as those sources of light, and many more that I had on the previous slide, have helped make me better. So you're not alone. So don't be afraid to break trail. I mean, after all, if Cadet Davis hadn't done what he did in 1936, Lord knows where I would have been 50 years later. Don't be afraid to break trail. Fourth lesson. Most of us in this profession try and put as much good out in the world as we can. It tends to be instinctive for us. My way of trying to put good out in the world is not just coming here and pontificating and yelling at you, but it's also just, I made a personal commitment. Anyone asks me for help for cyber in Phoenix, I'll give them at least an hour of my time. I spent a lot of time doing what I've been doing. I've been embarrassing Catherine this entire conference and say, yeah, I need to get you employed. Yeah, Eric, you need to meet Catherine. Monica, you need to meet Catherine. I've been doing that for a day and a half. I've been driving her crazy, and she's wondering whether or not she really wants to be here because, you know, I am a little cray-cray. I am a little cray-cray, okay? But seriously, you know, we put this good out in the world without any expectation of it coming back. And we don't know the impact that it has on others in most cases. And that's okay. You know, but we have to remember that we do have an impact and that we are making a difference out there. And every now and again, whether you know it or not, you get your George Bailey moment. My George Bailey moment came around September of 2002. I was working for a major consulting firm whose name you would recognize if I gave it to you. And I had a trust issue with the boss, and I was at a client site. I quit my job instantly, and I walked off a client site. Now, what makes that story even more interesting is my wife at the time, it was an IT administrator working for a company that was doing government consulting. Her company lost the contract, and she lost her job exactly a week earlier. So within the space of 2 weeks, I went from, remember my dad's situation, one child in private school, 2 car payments, a mortgage, and no income, and 2 incomes, to no income, and all of that looming over my head. I called my wife. I was living in Maryland at the time. I was in Connecticut. And having a great and wonderful partner is a great thing. I've married the girl of my dreams for almost 31 years now. She said exactly, amen, amen. She said exactly 2 words to me: come home. Come home. So I got on a plane, and it still hadn't sunk in with me because, you know, they teach us to work. I know how to work. I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but I'm going to figure this out. By the time I got home and remembered to turn on my cell phone, I had 15 messages. Hey, Kim, I hear you're on the market. You need to go talk to so-and-so. Tell them I sent them to you. Hey, Kim, I hear you're on the market. If you need a job, we'll create one for you. Hey, Kim, I hear you're on the market. And it just went like that. And I called one of them and I said, Otis, why? He laughed at me on the phone and says, like you wouldn't do the same thing. And then he told me about something I had done for him years later that to this day, as God's my witness, I do not remember. And he said, you have no idea how much you changed my life. Folks, technology is easy. It does exactly what you tell it to do. Most of the time, the reason we exist is because we tell it to do stupid things. That's why I will never be unemployed. Okay? People matter. The good you put out in the world matters. You may never know how much that impacts folks, but don't forget, people matter, and the good you put out in the world absolutely, positively, categorically matters. Please don't forget that. So, that was loud, I'm sorry. So, but how do you know? That is a question that was asked to me by a security intern in my current company. How do you know what you do matters? And I was almost incredulous, but it's a fair question. Like I said, you may never know. And I mentioned to you that I have, I had an example that I used from my martial arts training days. I told you I had 3 careers in a hobby, keeping people safe. My hobby was I taught self-defense martial arts for many years. And in the 20 years that I learned, taught, and practiced, I must have trained hundreds of people. You don't know if it makes any difference to the kids, the elderly that you're doing with. I had 2 cases that came back to me, one of which, I'm getting ready to teach class, and the 9-year-old runs up and tackles me in the leg. This is why I have bad knees. Says, hey, Mr. Kim, I did the thing, it was wonderful, I did the thing, it was great. And his mother behind him in tears, because what the 9-year-old translation was, that thing that I taught him 2 weeks ago about how to get away from bad people who are trying to take you away from your parents and do bad things to you, actually worked because he got away from a bad person who was trying to take him away from his parents and do bad things to him. Or, the high school senior going in to be a college freshman, who's, you know how it is. You've got, they're into the boys, they're into why am I here, my mom's making me, I'll be 18 next month, I'll go away. And you see them drifting apart in class, and then all of a sudden they're back with reckless abandon. And they're coming in and they're just totally focused. And on the last day you're on the mat, as a 20-something, she walks up and tells you, says, I never told you this, but someone tried to assault me my freshman year on campus. And the only reason I'm not going to break up. The only reason I got away is because all I could hear is you yelling in my ear, telling me what to do. So sometimes you do get that feedback, but in cybersecurity, and many times you don't. But it doesn't mean that standing in the gap is meaningless. And I learned this in my days as a GI. Unlike Larry and Devin, I was an Army guy. I was in the real service. And MK actually overcame his roots with his sissy school because he's a Marine. So that's recorded now. So I'm going to hear about that from all of you. It's okay. You and I have been doing this forever. So way back, even before the dinosaurs roamed the earth, once upon a time there were 2 Germanys. The Federated German Republic and the Democratic Republic of Germany, or the Federated Republic of Germany and the German Democratic Republic, aka West and East Germany. Now, this entity called the Soviet Union, there was always this fear and concern that they were just going to come and run over and take over Western Europe again. And if you look at the terrain, the best way for them to come with an armored and mechanized force was through East Germany. And the best place for them to actually roll through, given the terrain, was where that little yellow dot is bouncing, to a gap in the terrain that's centered around the city of Fulda, otherwise known as the Fulda Gap for those of us with military history. The mission for guarding the inner German border centered around the Fulda Gap belonged to the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, Black Horse. Ladies and gentlemen, theirs was a die-in-place mission. The Cav was not ever designed to stop the Soviet Union from rolling through. It was designed to slow them down, while the rest of the NATO forces and the rest of the US forces massed to try and drive back their aggression. So their mission statement was, see this piece of land? You're going to park your track here, and you're going to fight here. And you're going to fight here until I tell you to move, and then you're going to come back here and you're going to fight on this piece of land. You see this piece of land? You're going to fight here until I tell you to move, and then you're going to fight on this piece of land. And you are going to put your saber in the ground, and you own this piece of land, and the only reason you move is if you're dead. This is where we make our last stand. Had the Soviet Union rolled through, the 11th ACR's mortality rate was projected to be 100%. It was a die-in-place mission. Yet every year, soldiers and officers volunteered for that mission. Fast forward, November 1989, Berlin Wall falls. December 1990, Germany unifies. October 1993, the 11th CAF furls its unit colors for one last time. The unit is disbanded. The 55th Colonel of the regiment, now retired four-star General William S. Wallace, yes, that's the same name for the guy in Braveheart, that's not a joke, was actually the colonel who was presiding over the folding of the unit. I was actually in the unit as an intelligence officer at the time. And I got to witness then Colonel Wallace talk to a reporter and say, aren't you sad that the unit's going away? Aren't you sad that the unit's going away? And the colonel looked at the reporter as if the reporter was a moron and said, don't you understand? We won. And he pointed to our unit colors, and military unit colors have battle streamers for every battle that they've been in, and ours had dozens of battle streamers. And he said, our greatest victory as a regiment is that there's not a battle streamer on our colors that says the Battle of the Fulda Gap. Because we stood, bad things did not happen. I remember that to this day. In his own way, Colonel Wallace was actually extolling the philosophy of Edmund Burke that says the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Folks, standing in the gap matters. You may never know it, you may never see it, but it does matter. I stand every day for the single mom shopping at Walmart. You know, the one who's working 2 jobs trying to make ends meet, has 3 kids, keeps them clean, has dignity, so that when she goes shopping, clips her coupons and has a little bit extra for her kids, her card isn't declined because some asshole hacker stole all her money. I stand for the individual who looks forward to his or her tax return because they're looking for that windfall as an unexpected bonus to pay an additional bill, to fund the college fund, or for God's sake, just take a little bit of a vacation because they've been working so hard. I stand because of the small business owner who, if they get attacked and hacked, has a 60% chance of going out of business, losing their dreams as an entrepreneur, losing their primary source of revenue, losing their ability to go forward. And I stand in the gap with some of the biggest, bravest, brightest, boldest, badass people that the gods have ever chosen to create. And I'm just hoping and praying that they don't realize I'm just fighting to keep stride. Now, this may not appeal to you. It may not appeal to that intern. Maybe you need that tangible thing that sits in your hand so that you can get that instantaneous dopamine hit, the equivalent of a like on FaceTwit or whatever the hell it is, within the background. That's okay. There are a lot easier careers to have in IT. Software development comes to mind, okay? Where that need for that instant gratification can be satisfied day in and day out. But if you want to do something meaningful, if you want to make a difference in the world, if you want to help out people you may never, ever, ever see or hear from, yet know you're making it better because you stood, all I need you to do at whatever level you are at, wherever you enter, is to stand. Just stand. Please stand. That's all. Now, any presentation that you can end with a quote from Fred Rogers has to be a good thing. This is one of my favorite quotes from him. It's actually from his mother about looking for the helpers. You know, they're the ones who are usually running towards the chaos and towards the bad things. For everyone in this room who's either coming into the field or is in the field, I have a hope and wish for you. My hope is that you will choose to either run with me into that gap and stand, or continue running with me into that gap and stand. My wish is that when my time is done, that you will run farther and faster and do it better than I have ever been able to do. The world needs you. Make no mistake, the world needs you. You're learning the skill. I pray to God that you continue to have the will. And my time is up. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Larry, it's yours.
I have some time, yeah. Let me get back up here then, I'm sorry. I figured. Yes, ma'am.
I want to see if others have questions to ask you. Do we have any questions?
Please, sir.
Manish?
Let's wait for the mic because I am both blind and hard of hearing. It's less that, but I also want the people who are recording to hear as well.
Thank you. That was beautiful and honest, authentic, and personal, which is the most powerful way to be able to talk about why we do what we do. You said something that the people around me that bring me light, that we talk about, which is coming into a space where you're the only person that is like you. Mm-hmm. And we debate about it. Sometimes we're with the angle that you talk about. Be there. You went through a lot to get there. Someone opened a hidden door for you, like, be there. And then other times, I don't think they deserve to have you there. You're going to bring your resource, your talent, we're going to bring this community. Any job you go to, we're going to bring this community to it. And if they can't show the respect or be inclusive or make it safe for you to be there, yeah, I could fight that psychological battle, but some days I think, nah, you don't deserve me.
And if the reason for you choosing not to be there is solely because there's no one like you there, my counterpoint to that is, then why the hell are they offering you the job? Because there are a lot of folks out there right now, and again, I also understand that there's a lot of folks who don't have the right say-do ratio. They're saying great things and they ain't doing crap, and they drive me crazy. But there are also a lot of folks out there trying to make it better, and are trying to look at things objectively and honestly, and are trying to figure out how to move down that path. So my question to you, not to answer now, but to think about is, how are you evaluating what is the reality of the situation, other than just the fact that there's nobody there like you right now? But they've offered you the job, but there's nobody like you there right now. So if you have a mechanism that in your mind evaluates whether or not they are bringing you in for the merits, or they're bringing you in to be a token to say, see, we have one, then make that evaluation and choose accordingly. But if you don't have that mechanism or means to evaluate, I tend to assume positive intent. Yeah. Okay? You know, my name is Kim Jones. I am not a petite Asian female. Okay? You know what you're getting. Okay? You know what you're getting when you come high. If you didn't, when I showed up at the door, you probably figured it out. You still offered me the job. Yeah. Okay? You've got to figure out why. And by the way, I tend to interview companies as aggressively as they interview me, which is how I make that choice.
I do cultural due diligence.
Yeah.
Figure out if they're serious about it. But thank you.
That's fair.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Anyone else? It's the last session and there's a hurricane coming. But if there are other questions, I will answer them. Oh, there's one in the corner. There we go. He can talk, turn on the mic.
Kim, not a question, just a comment. 37 years of business, 30 years of attending events like that, or like this. That's the most powerful close to a conference I've ever been a part of. You hit home too many places, and I thank you. When I started in IT years ago, I didn't see people that look like me. So just a reminder to stand in the gap. That's a great takeaway. Thank you.
Amen. Anyone else, or are we done?
Anybody else? Hello. All right. No one else. All right. So, see, I told y'all I wasn't lying to y'all. I told y'all.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right.
So, there's so much to unpack in what he said, right? And I'm not going to add anything to it, right? But that tribe, right? He put up there that tribe. I talked about it in one of my talks. You've heard it from multiple people. Find your tribe, find your community. This is it. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank our partners. I want to thank each and every one of you as an individual, everybody who participated, everybody who helped, everybody who came and just showed up, right? Like, we really appreciate you guys. This doesn't happen without all of you. It does not happen without all of you. So we've got a storm coming. I want everybody to travel safely, right? Godspeed in getting home or to whatever your next destination is. I do want to give one thing. We do have a partner who actually offered something to all of the attendees, right? So if you are familiar with Class LLC, Kian, he runs an organization that does a lot of training. So he's willing to give all people who attended the conference 20% off CEH training. So if anybody's looking to participate or take any classes from CEH, any training, Kian has offered a 20% discount. So if you want to email the CCSO training, well, he said any of their virtual CEH and or hybrid CISO training. So either one. He sent me a text to make sure I got it right. So if you want to email him at info@class-llc.com, he will send you some information about it. So, right, but this is what this is about, right? This is about us creating our own clan of how we connect together to be better, right? And bring others into the fold to help solve the problem that we all know needs to be solved. So once again, I thank you. I want to give everybody, be respectful of everybody's time so people can get on the road, including myself. Just, hey, I love you. I love you all. If you need anything from me, everybody here knows there's a million ways to reach me, a million ways to get in touch with me. Yes, Munish.
All right, so you traded emails with a bunch of people here at the conference. We're all on Slack.
Yes.
On Slack.
So,
Board member, get on Slack.
yes.
Send a bunch of emails, we're all there. That's how we're going to continue this.
Yeah. So you bring up, thank you for that, reminding me of that. So we have Slack for this community. Join Slack, engage. These same conversations that you started in here can be continued via that. It's easy. It's an app. You can load it on any device you want. You can load it on your laptop. You can load it on your phone. You can load, right? There's general channels in there that you can go in and ask questions. You can share things that you find out. Hey, there's a role opening up that you think somebody in here would want to hear about? Post it in there. There's a jobs channel, right? Utilize the Slack. That is part of the community that we're trying to build, is we are so spread apart, right, geographically, and traveling and on the road and doing all sorts of things all the time, right? Email, as nice as it is, sometimes, right, Slack is a great mechanism to quickly connect with this entire room via one simple message, right? So utilize a lot of the resources that we are providing as an organization to allow you to connect. Because what happens sometimes is we leave this room and we have a couple of email addresses, we connected with a couple of people on LinkedIn, and we've created these singular connections, but we lose this community connection, right? Don't forget, this community is just as important as your individual connections that you're going to make with people. Utilize this community as a resource and be a resource to this community. Yes, ma'am, Miss Abby.
If you need help with Slack getting invited to the channel, please find me before you leave.
There we go. And with that, mic drop.